Hey Adam, so last year both of us saw the Stanley Kubrick exhibit at the LACMA.
It was amazing.
And it's this touring exhibit that has a lot of memorabilia, original props, scripts, costume from his entire library of movies.
And Kubrick was legendary for not saving things from his movies. So the idea of a collected Kubrickiana exhibit of the pieces that have been saved, the archives of art direction stuff, his scripts, his original annotated scripts, his director's chair, it's an incredible exhibit. I went twice and spent a total of 7 hours in that exhibit. And then on the tour recently in the fall of 2014, I actually spent another 3 hours in the exhibit in Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival building.
It's a traveling exhibit.
Yeah.
And on that third time you saw the exhibit, you noticed there was something off.
Well, so, yeah, I never know where inspiration for making something is going to come. And it's often from like desiring an object. And I love The Shining, and I was looking at the stuff from The Shining in the exhibit, and I was looking at the maze they have. They have this wide layout of the maze. It's about probably 40 by 60 inches. And of course, I assumed that it's the maze from the film, specifically the one that Jack looks over in the Colorado room.
The giant room.
Yes, and it's this big architectural maze. And I went home and I looked up the maze from the movie, and the one from the movie isn't remotely. The one in the exhibit has nothing to do with the one in the movie. I know that someone built this and they spent time in it, and I don't want to deride their work because I also know that the exhibit is like, it's not like they've got all the money in the world, but this maze, from my standpoint, just does not do justice.
You're incredulous that was actually a part of the production.
It's not part of the production. There's no way it was part of the production. None of the layouts are the same as the movie. The entrance is on the long side, when in the movie, the entrance is on the short side of the maze, which is rectangle. It got me so rankled, I decided to make the maze from The Shining, specifically the architectural model. And then when I started to look into The Shining and started to really look at it, right, there's a maze you see in daylight when Wendy and Danny and Jack are getting a tour by Ullman. Now, that is just what you see in the film. There is no maze behind the entrance that you see. Those are just
outdoors, right? Just the facade.
Then there's the maze of, everyone knows, the finale that Danny's running through. That wasn't the full maze. They built about a quarter of it because that's all they needed for the kind of shots they did. Then there is the maze from the Colorado room that Jack looks over. That has a specific layout, and I was able to determine the layout by a poster that you can see on a kiosk in the film. And then there's even a fourth maze, which is as Jack looks over and the camera pulls out and you see Wendy and Danny and it's like he's looking at them in the model, that's a totally different maze.
Different layout.
Totally different layout. That layout is mirrored in both directions, and none of the other mazes are mirrored. So it's a long way of saying I got completely obsessed with the maze, decided to replicate it, and figured out that it was exactly O scale, which would make all the sense in the world. Since it's surrounded by little figures, that's what scale a model shop would choose to build something in.
It's an architectural scale for architectural models, and that's theoretically what that maze model was supposed to be in the movie.
Right.
The template for when they built the full maze in the fiction of the movie.
And O scale is 1/48 to 1/50th in scale. That means 1 inch equals 50 inches in real life. So, step one.
Drawing the maze.
Yes, I grabbed some craft paper, and on my dining room table, I carefully spent hours drawing this.
So this is 1-to-1 scale from what you think in the movie.
This is exactly how big the one in the movie is. I could be off by a few inches, but I don't think so. Notice that the hedge widths are different than the row widths. Now that meant that this required a grid of alternating sizes of squares. So I basically drew my own graph paper and spent about 3 hours at my dining room table carefully drawing this out. Everything worked out pretty great. I got a little bit off here at the finish because it jogs by an inch in a weird way that doesn't jibe with the rest of the maze. So as I drew it, it didn't quite center up, so I had to cut it and move it. But this is my guide. This is my template.
This in itself is an amazing exercise.
Yes.
A mental exercise. And then what goes on in your head about designing and building?
The whole time I'm obsessing and doing this, I'm thinking, how is this going to work? Look, the one they made in the movies probably carved out of foam. That's how a model shop would do it. And then flocked with your basic sort of greenery, which is something like a fine sawdust that's colored green. And you can buy this in model train stores. I want mine to be more permanent, so I'm going to look for the material that gives me ease of use, ease of coating, and that is MDF, particle board, effectively. And actually, the particle board I'm using, we've talked about it on the podcast before, it's called Trupan, and it's half of the weight of normal particle board.
Like LDF.
Yeah, LDF, and it's wonderful. It's all made from new growth pine, so it's very sustainable. It does mean that in the end, this thing's going to weigh about 100 pounds or 80 pounds. It's a lot because this is 80 linear feet of hedges in here.
So did you have the MDF of this width?
Yes, this is 3/4. Again, I work off the idea that model makers aren't looking to make things more complicated, right? Like custom width. No. They're going to go with the standard width, 3/4 of an inch. That's what I chose. The opening, the rows are 1 1/8. And so I'm going to make the hedges, they're 13 feet tall in real life, so I extrapolated that out. It's about 3+ inches. The center section here is actually both thicker and taller. I had to go through all of these different screen grabs and photos from behind the scenes to extrapolate all of this information because there are no perfect shots of this thing.
And we're going to cooking show this because you've already started working on it.
Yes, I have.
Let's go check it out.
Okay. Bom, bom, bom.
Holy moly!
Yeah. So this is a daunting build. This is a very, very significant and daunting construction. Like I said, there's 80 linear feet of hedge inside this, not including what I've just done here. And this right here is about 16 hours of work, which for me, frankly, I like to work fast.
You want to be efficient.
I want to see more results after 16 hours, but I feel really good about this. I have solved a lot of problems in this construction. I started with the most complicated walls, which are the outside walls, and they're complicated because they've got this step back, they've got these columns, they've got these crowns. These crowns, by the way, I have some stills I took while making these. You'll love this. First, I took a long piece of 1-inch particle board and I cut it at 26-degree angle on both sides.
Okay.
Then using my sled, I cut it into exactly 1-inch widths and then turned it sideways, mounted it between two boards and cut the other two planes at exactly 26 degrees.
So they're all perfect.
Then I leaned it on its side and cut all the little crowns off.
All the tops off.
Yes, and they're not just glued on, they're all pinned in because I want this thing to be bulletproof.
So is this one continuous piece of wood behind it and then a layer on the front?
It is, and then these are separate, basically L's that sit on top and got screwed and glued to it.
Okay.
The front we can walk around to the front. The front was a little more complicated because of all this detailing here, but I'm really confident that this is as accurate as you could possibly get. Barring having actual access to the model, this is as accurate as it is.
And so for the inner hedges,
For the inner hedges,
you have your LDF,
right?
and you're just going to cut out the pieces, lay it out.
Right, so using my map, I'm going to work from the inside out, which is why these pieces aren't mounted in yet. I am not gluing, I am screwing. So everything gets placed, marked, pre-drilled from underneath, countersunk, and then screwed with screws. So this is, hell or high water won't ever remove these from this board. It also means glue, when you want a nice surface underneath a model, glue can be your total enemy because you can end up with little tendrils and it's hard to clean up. Screws, no problem. Also, when glue doesn't do well with travel and moving around, and this thing will, be in several places before its end.
And so what is the floor going to be? What is the ground going to be?
The floor is going to be this color.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's very different than a wooden bottom in the film that I can see. And I like the cleanliness of this. I decided not to paint it. I could have gone with white or like a medium, but actually I love this color so much. I feel like it works really well with the green.
Talk about the flocking process.
The flocking process is, I'm using a pH neutral glue.
Yes.
Because I'm an archival
Buy this
guy.
at Flax.
Yep, and that glue tends to bead on the surface of the LDF. So first I hit the LDF with a coat of 77 spray glue. And that just gives it a texture that makes this glue wet out evenly.
Okay.
Then I sprinkle the flocking on, and this is my flocking, right? So I basically do something like that. and it stays where the glue is, and the green undercoat helps hide what we call the crimes. And then I bake it. Now I bake it in a little oven right here. My oven is basically just 3 pieces of wood taped together, and we can see I've got some sample crowns that are drying. And this is, it's euphemistically called an oven. I've got a blow dryer on the other side, but this is a classic modeling trick. That is one of the gentlest heats there is, and it's a great way to dry paint. So I often dry things out by putting them under a cardboard box and sticking the blow dryer in that box and running it for 2 hours.
Wow.
It just makes it about 120 degrees in here. Very, very gentle. I've got some hedges here which are flocked, but only on one side. So then I'll take it and I'll coat that and those sides and flock the rest of that and put it back in the oven.
That's a lot of work. You got to do sides individually at a time, flip them around.
That right there is 4 feet of 4.5 feet of hedge. I have total of 80 linear feet to complete. So there's no fast way to burn through this. It is literally just work a day, kind of grind through it. I may end up bringing in some help just for the busy work.
And you said that it goes against your urge to want to assemble it as you go.
Yes. So when you're doing something like this, you have to consider, how am I going to get in my own way? For instance, right now, I would love to mount this outside edge down.
It'd be so satisfying.
But I can't.
Right.
I mean, I can pre-drill it and do that stuff, but I need to work from the inside out in order to have the best access to the material as I go.
An eighth here, an eighth there, that could screw up the entire thing.
Right, that's the other thing, is I can't mount any of these individual hedges until I've completed them all. My map is close enough, but what happens when you're working in a grid system like that is you can end up with what's called an introduced error. Like I do inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, and I've been off by a 1/16 on all but 3. That means when you get down to here, all of a sudden it's not an inch and a quarter, it's like 3/4 of an inch. When you're trying to, it's a nightmare. So in order to accommodate for that, I will complete all the internal hedges before mounting them down. It's crazy. There's still some uneven things about the flocking. It's a difficult process to get right. You can go back over and fix little things, but you still end up with some trouble. So the final stage of the flocking is I recoat it with the same paint that I used at the beginning. And this is stuff I got from Flax. It's a high particulate, very opaque color paint that I love. Doesn't dry it incredibly fast, but I don't mind that.
Yeah, this looks great.
Yeah,
Texture.
so I go back over it with that in order to do a final seal on it.
And then you're going to dress it up with some tiny people.
Well, yeah, you see people in the film. There are little tiny people. Wait, there's actually people, and there are street lights all the way around. So I'm also going to put street lights all the way around the perimeter of my model, and they're 12 volts. They will actually light up like a real train system.
These are the most highly detailed O-scale miniature people I've ever seen.
Dude, and
Incredible.
They ought to be, because they're about $4 a piece.
A person.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Because I go online and I try to import them from overseas. And I get stuff like this.
Yeah, these are the Alibaba ones. I bought like 1,000 of these for what, like $5?
Yes.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, you have so much detail. It's gonna look beautiful. By your guesstimate, how much more work is there here? You don't even want to think about it.
I can barely. This is one. I think that there's at least 30 more hours of work in this, which, given my days, it's probably, probably 7 days of work, 7 full days of work. This is one of the more laborious and labor-intensive things I've taken on. But when I'm done, it's going to be the only one in the world.
Wow.
It's going to be the most accurate. I mean, I want to get a snorkel lens and walk through it. Yes!
That's right. Oh, we should totally do that. All right, so we're going to document as much of the rest of this build as possible and then check in when it's all done.
Excellent.
Can't wait.
And here it is.
Holy moly.
Yeah. I'm kind
Wow.
of gobsmacked by this myself. I've had 3.5 solid weeks to devote to this, over which I've spent about 55 hours.
And it was painstaking.
Yeah. This is 93 some odd linear feet of flocked hedge of multiple different grades and types, and getting it all in was just...
And then over those 3 weeks, we
Yeah.
would come by and see it built step by step.
Yeah.
And see the parts where you were happy to position the quadrants and then actually get the pieces glued in. So let's go over it, because
Okay.
there's so much more here.
This is, by the way, in the best way that I can, as accurate as humanly possible, to the architectural maze that Jack looks over in the Colorado room when Wendy and Danny are walking through the maze in daytime.
Yes. Yeah. So with the flocked hedges, MDF flocked, took time to spray paint, to flock.
And also to make durable, because I had to handle all these parts, so it couldn't just be a simple spray glue. I had to protect the flocking with extra coats of spray paint and clear coat. Nothing is glued down, everything is pinned and screwed. So all these hedges had to be positioned, traced, pre-drilled, countersunk, and then with a big 3-inch drywall screw in there.
It's so sturdy. And then the tiny people. So we talked about this O scale.
Yeah.
It's highly detailed with now benches.
With benches that I made out of styrene and lights. These aren't 100% accurate. The real lights on the model in the film were much simpler, although the actual hexagonal light on top is accurate.
And they didn't light up.
They did not light up in the film that we could see, but I couldn't resist, given that they already had LEDs in them. I've been burning them for a couple of days just to make sure everything's good. There's a newsstand and a map kiosk, and the map kiosk is a scan off of a Blu-ray of the actual film map kiosk.
There's actually a map there.
And there are magazines in the newsstand, but that's an Easter egg that I won't reveal until you actually get to see this model up close.
Oh my goodness. And then the base.
And then the base. This is so. My next door neighbor Bobby is a master furniture and cabinet carpenter, and he cut this molding for me specifically. So this is exactly to my drawing. There is a lip here so that the maze can sit down in that and I can screw it in. And then there's this channel out of the bottom, and it's in this channel that I ran copper sticky tape. And then I was able to solder the lights right to the copper sticky tape.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually able to, the lights going in and being wired took a total of about an hour. It went much faster than I thought it would.
That's real problem solving.
Yeah.
And then one final piece. Is this done? I gotta ask.
Well, have we talked about where it's going?
Well, let's tell
Okay.
people where it's going.
This is the best part, is that after I started building this, through various channels of great generosity and wonderful connection, this is now going to leave this shop and ship to Monterrey, Mexico to become part of the Stanley Kubrick traveling exhibition.
Coming full circle.
Yes.
Where you first saw the maze that they had.
Yeah.
That was completely inaccurate, but now this is going to take its place.
Yes, and I couldn't be more thrilled. They're going to have a little plaque with a credit for me on it. And speaking of plaques, there is one last piece of this, which nobody knows about because it's not visible in the film, but I was able, through my research, to cough up the fact that on the back of this, there is a plaque titled The Overlook Maze, and I had a high enough resolution photo that I could see that it says The Overlook Maze. I can't read the text, so I had to make it up. You were kind enough to laser cut this.
Yep.
It's etched. This is a aluminized finished metal made for plaques like this, and then it goes.
And this is just plastic.
This is just plastic, but it looks
Perfectly-
really legit,
looks
right?
Totally legit. We
And that
have-
lives right there.
Wow.
That is a finished product. Really, this is unprecedented for me. I mean, I've replicated lots of things in my life, but it's usually like it's an hour a day for 5 years, not 55 solid hours of devotion over a couple of weeks.
And incredibly pleasurable
Yeah.
to do so.
Totally.
This is going to the Stanley Kubrick exhibition.
Which will eventually make its way back here to San
back to
Francisco
San
in
Francisco.
2016.
I want to get some photos of this. Let's get
Right,
over
with the
here.
snorkel.
We have your snorkel lens.
This is so cool.
I have my camera.
Okay.
I want to get some photo and video before this heads down to Mexico.
Yes.
Now, I want to let people know also, you've documented this entire build.
I have documented with hundreds of photos the entire build from start to finish. All the problems, all the things I had to rebuild, which were many, all the difficulties, and this will do as a separate post.
Yes.
A long post describing the entire build process with supporting photos and text and everything.
And we're going to discuss this in a separate video. Links are below if you want to know exactly how you problem solve the building of this maze. But thank you guys for watching. Let's take some photos of this.
Okay, now in order to take photos, I think it's best if we put it on the floor, and there's this extra bit. So put your cameras down.
Yep.
So here's the thing is, the craters are coming in a couple of days to crate this up. And in order for it to ship safely, I wanted to protect it. So I built a bracket for it. If you would grab the back of that by that handle, okay? And here's what you and I are gonna do. You and I are gonna lower this down into the corners. Yep, there you go. And I'm even shipping this with a tool for doing this that's colored the same so that they don't lose it, nor can they screw up.
And the crate goes over this entire thing.
They'll build the crate around this. You could stand on this and it's totally protected.
Brilliant.
You and I can lift this up, and Will can pull out the table. Okay, here we come down.
Use your legs, gentlemen.
It's me on power.
Isn't that great?
That is great.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can stand on top of this and like nothing's going to happen to my maze. That was the whole point.
That is absolutely beautiful.
I haven't seen it from this angle. It's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. Now what happens if something gets mixed up?
Well, so I actually have a repair kit. I've got extra crowns that go on the columns. I've got extra benches, and I've got extra street lights in case there's any significant injuries. And I'm going to include a little write-up that tells anyone who needs to know exactly how to best repair this. I'm also going to include some extra flocking and spray paint of both colors that it gets so they can implement a repair if it gets dinged. But hopefully this frame will protect it.
And if anyone sees this at the exhibit in Mexico City or in exhibits forward, please send us photos.
Yes, yes.
We want to see this in its new home.
I know.
Before it comes back on its tour.
It's so exciting.
Like we said, there are more materials on Tested, links below.
They will be untested. Might not publish at the same time as this, but it will be up untested. So if you want to build your own maze, for instance, I'm going to include all the measurements, all of the problem solving, everything. And if you do build your own, boy, I want to know about it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.